In the early hours of the 29th of December, 2017, the quiet streets of Gualeguaychú, Argentina, became the stage for a crime that would soon shock the entire nation. A 20-year-old man named Fernando Pastorizzo was found lying on the cold pavement, shot twice. Paramedics rushed to the scene, but by the time they reached the hospital, Fernando was already gone. At first glance, police assumed this was a robbery gone wrong, but when they realized nothing had been stolen, the investigation took a chilling new direction. Fernando was born on the 3rd of January, 1997 in the province of Ontario. Despite his parents' separation, he grew up in a loving home, described as extroverted, funny, and always surrounded by friends. By all accounts, Fernando had a bright future ahead. But everything began to change in 2012, when he started dating a girl who would forever alter the course of his life, Nahir Galarza. Nahir was born into a powerful family. Her father, Marcelo Galarza, was a senior police officer, and her mother, Yamina, a former officer herself. With influence in their small city, the Galarzas held authority wherever they went. Nahir often bragged that her father could get her out of anything, and in many ways it was true. Spoiled, beautiful, and admired by her classmates, she got whatever she wanted and no one dared to challenge her. To her peers, Nahir was glamorous, excelling at school, playing hockey, even crowned the queen of a carnival float. But beneath the polished image, she was arrogant, vain, and cruel. She mocked other girls, humiliated those she thought beneath her, and lashed out whenever she felt threatened. This was the girl who captured Fernando's heart and slowly destroyed his life. At first, their romance was kept secret. Nahir wanted the freedom to flirt with other boys while keeping Fernando devoted to her. When he discovered her betrayals, he was heartbroken, but instead of leaving, he clung to her, blinded by first love. Soon, the relationship turned toxic. Nahir became possessive, checking his phone, monitoring his whereabouts, threatening him if he dared to see other girls. Despite everything, Fernando remained loyal. In 2016, he even traveled with Nahir and her family on vacation to Brazil, as if they were a normal couple. But the mask quickly slipped again. Arguments, betrayals, and violence escalated. By 2017, Fernando's friends were begging him to leave, warning him that Nahir was dangerous. But he didn't listen. He still believed she would change. Christmas night, 2017. At a nightclub, Fernando caught Nahir kissing another man. Furious, he confronted her. A fight broke out. Witnesses saw Fernando grab Nahir by the shoulders, but in the chaos, Nahir's friend punched him, and the scene was twisted to make Fernando look like the aggressor. Hours later, Nahir and her friend ambushed him outside his home, beating him while taunting that her father's position in the police would protect her. Humiliated, bruised, and devastated, Fernando confided in friends that he almost lost consciousness during the attack. He was tired of the endless cycle and told people he wanted to move to another city, start college, and finally escape Nahir. On the 28th of December, Fernando and Nahir spoke for what would be their final conversation. He told her clearly it was over. But in the early hours of the next morning, Nahir appeared at his house. She begged him to spend one last night together. Fernando agreed, completely unaware that this night would be his last. After 3 hours at her house, Fernando got ready to leave. But Nahir asked for one final favor: to take her to her grandmother's house on his motorcycle. What Fernando didn't know was that she had slipped her father's 9mm pistol into her pocket before leaving. Halfway down a dark, empty road, she told him to stop. And then she pulled the trigger. The first shot struck him in the back, throwing him off his motorcycle. As he struggled on the ground, Nahir calmly walked up and fired a second shot at point-blank range. Cold, precise, final. Then she began searching the area. A passing taxi driver saw the scene though. At first, he thought it was just a couple having an argument. Minutes later, When he returned, he realized Fernando was alone, bleeding on the pavement. He called emergency services, but by then it was too late. In the hours after the murder, Nahir returned home calmly, put the gun back in its place, showered, and went to sleep. Later that morning, she even posted on social media claiming Fernando was the love of her life and that she would miss him forever. The performance was convincing to some, but not to investigators. The police quickly realized this was no robbery. Fernando's belongings were untouched. Their suspicions turned toward those closest to him. When they interviewed Nahir, she was disturbingly calm, even cold. She suggested one of Fernando's friends might have killed him. But detectives weren't convinced. When evidence surfaced, photos, videos, and testimony proving she and Fernando had been in a relationship, her lies began to crumble. At first, she claimed they were never together. Then, she claimed Fernando abused her. Finally, she told police the shots were an accident. Each version contradicted the last. The truth was undeniable. Nahir had pulled the trigger twice. Her trial in 2018 became a media circus. Feminist groups demanded her release, insisting she was a victim of abuse. But testimony from Fernando's friends revealed the opposite, that he had suffered at her hands. Even the psychologist hired by Nahir's defense turned against her, describing her as manipulative, spoiled, and dangerous. On the 3rd of July 2018, Nahir Galarza was convicted of aggravated homicide and sentenced to life in prison, making her the youngest woman in Argentine history to receive such a sentence. She would have to serve 35 years before even being considered for parole. But even behind bars, the story didn't end. Nahir seemed to enjoy the attention. She gave interviews, posed for photos, and was treated almost like a celebrity. Later, she even accused her own father of committing the murder, claiming she had taken the blame to protect him. Authorities dismissed this as a desperate attempt to escape her sentence. Today, Nahir remains in prison, her name still infamous across Argentina. She will forever be remembered as the spoiled girl who thought she could get away with anything until the night she took the life of the man who loved her.